Welcome, everybody, to the Heartbeats podcast. I'm your host, Ruth Kogan, and I want to thank you all for joining me and my friends on the podcast all about love, specifically and most importantly, the love God has for us, as demonstrated in how he brings two people together for marriage and how he's loving upon his singles. And I'm really excited to share with you all my friends today, Forrest and Theresa Bouyer. Woo, woo, woo. Hi, friends. How are you?
Awesome.
Doing well. Excited.
Good.
Well,
Forrest, are you excited?
The anticipation is killing me, literally.
I'm done. Forrest is an honest one. So, but I know you all from church. We go to church together, and you all came highly recommended by your family members who've also been on this podcast, Coy and Katora Bouyer from season 1. So, and I got to interview them before I was even back in Lansing. So, I didn't know you all existed. And then through them from church, have had the privilege of getting to know you all. So I'm very excited to hear your all story. So what should we know about Forrest and Theresa Bouyer? What are the deets?
Ladies first.
Good job.
Oh, I knew you were going to do that. What should you know? What you're going to get is pretty much what you see. There is a lot of truth. There is a lot of transparency. And I don't mean that like when we walk around saying, hey, this is what we've gone through. But when people ask questions or they sit and talk with us as a married couple, the transparency is pretty real. I think that personally for me, I've learned that transparency is a way for God's people to communicate to each other and sometimes help each other. People see and think they know what they see. And they think they know the story. But then when they talk and learn and listen, they realize, wow, we didn't know that.
That's so true.
So that's my spiel.
I love it. Forrest, what do you want to add?
Hey, I think she hit all the bullet points. I'm just kind of ready to dive right into this.
Oh my gosh. Well, I will say that authenticity.
You'll get a lot of comedy. You'll get a lot of comedy.
That's true.
Especially my husband, I think is one of the funniest people on earth. But what's so funny with him is I think that the funniness comes from a place of reality. And it's just his way of how he sees the world, which is super, super unusual and unique. But that's one of the things I love about you.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm done. That's one of the things I love about you.
Life is serious, but it's not that deep. And I think people kind of get those two things confused.
Good.
Heck, if you can't laugh at yourself, then I think you personally have issues.
Yeah. You got to have a good sense of humor.
Which is why I'm constantly laughing.
Life is heavy. If you let it, like for real, life got a lot of going on and you got to be able to laugh at yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
If you know where you stand in Christ, then the heaviness of life then becomes more comedic to me than heavy. Because the devil is a lie. He would have you believe that the heaviness is going to weigh you down and you can't.
Good.
What he doesn't realize is I know that I already win. The victory is mine. I don't know the final score, but I don't care if I win by 1 point or 101 points. I win. That's all that matters.
You preaching already.
Competitive.
My goodness. Yeah, right. No, sometimes that competitive spirit got to waken up in us. I love it. Well, okay, so we're going to follow Forrest's wishes here. We're going to dive right in. But as we get into the Bouyer story, I want to remind everyone that stories are like sermons. And as we look at how God has worked in their lives and is continuing to work in y'all's lives, it demonstrates deep truths about God, about his character, and it's a glimpse of the things he wants to do in each of our lives. And so he might do it in a different way, but the reality is he is in the business of beauty, of bringing beauty from ashes, redemption, all the things. So as you listen to their story, I want you to pay attention to what details are sticking out to you. Around here, we call that your heartbeat. This is the Heartbeats podcast. All right. At the end of the episode, you will hear my heartbeat. They won't be here no more, so they don't get to hear my heartbeat until this comes out, which is, what did I sense God speaking to me as I listen to their story? So God wants to encourage you and build your faith through what he's done with Forrest and Theresa. So with that said, let's get right into it. Theresa and Forrest, we want to know first, what was going on with y'all before you actually met each other? So we need some framework about what was happening in your lives before God actually introduced you all.
Next question.
Already, we got started.
I gave Forrest editing rights to say,
So I'm going to go first.
Okay.
So before we met, on the 28th of this month will be 26 years that we've been married, which quite honestly is practically half my life. And I think we dated for a couple of years before we got married. So that would be 28 years. If I'm honest with you, Ruth, it's hard for me to go back and tell you what I was doing before I met Theresa. Outside of, I was just really kind of living my life, not really following any particular pattern, definitely not following. I wasn't walking with the Lord, or I was half in and half out. I was young. I was definitely young. I thought I was ambitious. I thought I was following my dreams. And today, though, I'll be 57 in April next month. What I realize now, hindsight is 2020, right? A retrospect. Really, I was kind of lost. I was floundering. I wasn't following or chasing anything. I was just floundering, bumping from girl to girl, job to job. I must have changed my major 3 or 4 times. Searching might be a better word for it, but not necessarily searching through prayer, not searching through having the Lord lead me and me follow. In fact, I used to have this saying that, well, this is scary. I know what the Lord is calling me to do. I know the direction he wants me to take, but I don't really want to go that route. I got my own way of doing it. And in fact, I told my brother years ago, that God's going to have to hit me over the head with a bag of bricks to get me to do it his way. I literally said that. Now, he never had to hit me over the head with the bag of bricks. He just hit me with 1 brick, and that was enough. But that's kind of where I was. I don't really remember my dating life before Theresa. It's vague. I don't even really know if I would refer to it as a dating life. I was just out there, just, as the young folks say today, living my best life, or what I thought was my best life. Really, it was somewhat raggedy. So that's where I was. Lost.
I was actually, when we met, or before we met, I had 3 children. I was married once, and I was going through a divorce. Never really had Jesus in my life. I've heard of him growing up here and there through the Catholic church that my siblings went to when they were younger. But it was just a pretty messy situation up until I met Forrest. I was just trying to get by being a single mom with 3 boys. I was terrified all the time. And I didn't think that I knew everything. In fact, I didn't know anything. And thank God, now looking back at the people that the Lord put in my life, that they had played a heavy hand in surrounding me and helping me through it, who I will forever be grateful for. So what I did know, though, was even though I was going through a divorce, I knew that I wanted to be somebody's
Yeah.
wife. Unfortunately, I was just the wrong
Yeah.
husband the first
Yeah.
time around. So it wasn't necessarily like I was out there looking for a husband. It was, I just knew that I wanted to be
Yeah.
somebody's wife and a good mom. But it was a very dark process and place to be up until that
Yeah.
point, really, until we met. And we actually met in 1995
Okay.
is when we met.
94.
It was 95.
Okay.
So any dates that are thrown out there,
Listen to you.
for sure. For sure.
Wow.
Okay.
So see, now you got me. Yeah, I'm super curious then. So you all, neither one of you were really walking with God at that time of your lives. And
I was actually running from him.
right, you said God had to hit me over the head with the bricks. Okay.
Yeah. A bag of bricks.
Yeah, bag of bricks. Clarification. Yeah. So but you both had some awareness or at least some level of belief in God or that he existed, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. For me, and let me be clear, crystal clear. I grew up in a household where the Lord was present. My parents knew him. We went to church. My grandparents knew him. My great grandparents knew him. I got God everywhere I went, which is probably why when I got out on my own, I'm like, I'm done with all that. There were things that didn't line up. You know, my elders, they were like, this is going to sound bad, right? But they were like slaves. And this is what I mean. Slaves were poor. They didn't have anything. And they were always praying, oh, the Lord's going to make it okay. But he never made it okay, at least how I defined what okay was. They were poor. They were struggling always. And I didn't want no part of no God like that.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm good. I was always striving to be different, but to be clear, it was just monetary. You know, big house, multiple cars. I was done with worshiping God that way. I wanted to see it manifest in my life financially. That's what I wanted to see.
No, I appreciate that clarity. I think so many people can relate to that. That reality of like, I don't want God in this way, but somehow
I want it my way.
way. Yeah. We want to define God on our terms or yeah.
Correct.
So how did you all actually meet? Let's get into, story time. Tell us the story.
So there are
Again, there's Forrest's truth, and then there's the truth.
All right. I'm going to let her get away with putting that out there in cyberspace. I had a stepfather who used to say to me, there's two ways to do things, my way and the wrong way.
Ooh.
So as I'd share with you how we met, understand it's my way.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I'm going to keep it real short because it is pretty simple. I might be off on the time. I thought it was 94. She said it was 95. So I spent some time in the military. I came home in late 1989, and I was really struggling with the things that I had seen and done and in the service. And today they would call it PTSD, but that's not what they called it back then. In fact, the term was kind of derogatory. They just said you were shell shocked, or it was something less than I'm a conquering man, which is what I thought I was. So I masked that with alcohol and substances, marijuana, and anger. So I really dealt with that hard. I don't even really remember the first year and a half I came home. It's kind of just a blur, or it's like a dark gray blur area in my memory. But at some point I got my life together, or I started moving in the direction that I wanted. I wanted to go to college. I wanted to make some money. And I was always told in order for that to happen, you got to go to college. So college it was. I'm living with a roommate. Now we're in the early 90s. Well, in the interim, I enrolled in Lansing Community College, went down to Atlanta, Georgia, to Morehouse College. Didn't work out. Had nothing to do with academics, had everything to do with the party inside of me. And found my way back home, kind of disgracefully. My family, the church, everybody was behind me to go down there. I collected money from folks to go down there. And I went down there and kind of stepped on my behind and blew it. So I come back home like, man, I let a lot of people down. And that's really the first time I ever actually felt that I really let people down. And it bothered me to that extent. Well, my stepfather picked me up in the bus station in Detroit. I came home on the Greyhound bus. And I was contemplating what he was going to say. This was a man of God. This was a man in the church. This man never missed a Sunday in all the years that I knew him. So I was concerned and worried about what he was going to say and what my response was going to be. He just walked up to me with a little smile on his face and hugged me and told me it was going to be all right. At that point, Morehouse was behind me. What do I have to do to move forward? So I got involved in I started hanging out with different people. I'm back in Lansing now. I got enrolled. I went back to Lansing Community College for a little while, still trying to figure it out. And I got enrolled at Michigan State University.
Yeah, go
green.
white.
Go white.
Hey, come on. I'll at you, boy. I had a roommate at the time, really good friend of mine. And he goes up to, we're living on Edgewood Boulevard in Lansing. And both of us are considered non-traditional students because we went to the military out of high school.
Right.
So college referred to us as non-traditional students. We were non-traditional, but didn't have anything to do with going to the military first. He goes up to this bank and he comes home and he was telling me about this Italian girl that he saw at the bank and how fly she was. Me being the man I was, I'm like, from Missouri, right? The show me state. I got to see for myself. So I walked up to the bank because at the time I wasn't driving, but now it didn't matter to me that I wasn't driving. It didn't matter to me that I was on the bus. I'm the cat's meow, period. If you knew what I knew, you'd be trying to get on because I'm going places. I used to say, I have a Lexus. I just haven't picked it up yet. I haven't picked out the color yet. I got $1 million. I just ain't cashed the check yet. And I believed that like I never believed anything. So I go up to this bank and lo and behold, here's this Italian girl. Now I had seen Theresa prior to that in high school. We both used to hang out at this place called the Outer Limits on teen night. So I'd seen her before. I was aware of who she was, but not really aware, but I had seen her before. So that's how I first met her. She didn't really want to have anything to do with me. At the first time we talked, she told me she was going through a divorce and she had this picture on her desk that was facing her. So you would see the back of this picture while you sit at her desk. And I think she thought this was going to frighten me off. Like early in our first conversation, she turns this picture around so I can see these 3 beautiful little boys. And so I got 3 kids. So I want a big family. None of that mattered to me. Now, foolishly, none of that mattered. That was a lot of bravado. Actually, in hindsight, I think that was the Lord.
Talk about that.
Because everybody I knew thought that was a problem. But it just wasn't a problem to me. She says, well, I got 3 kids. I'm going through a divorce. Yeah, I don't care about all that. None of the things that society would say should matter, that none of that stuff mattered to me. I'm your knight in shining armor and I'm about to save you. That was literally my mentality. Now, I wasn't trying to marry Theresa. So maybe the fact that she had 3 kids, I don't care. I'm not marrying you. I thought she was cute. She looked good in the dress. We finna have some fun. That's kind of where I was at. So those meetings at the bank turned into us dating. Um, and I've been with her ever since. I mean, that it's not, well, our dating,
Tumultuous at best.
yeah, we probably shouldn't have got married, really. Yeah, on our best days, it was probably just average,
It was pretty toxic,
to say the least.
to say the least. I think the crazy thing about that was it seemed, if I had looked back at the times we were dating, I was very protective of my children.
Yeah, of course.
But it wasn't because Forrest was a mean person, or he actually was really, really good with my boys. Like, there was things he taught me. And at first I was like, you know nothing about raising children. But he got it, right? He understood that children wanted structure. They needed direction. And so it made sense as time went on. So it's not that he was very good to my children. But there was always that separation.
Yeah.
So when we were together with the children, it was good.
Yeah.
It was when we were away from the children and just he and I finding our way, what we brought to the table. We both brought tons of baggage to the table. And it was just really toxic. And I don't think we knew how to handle what came with us.
Right.
I'll say this, Ruth. I know today that the toxicity, is that a word?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The toxicity of our relationship while we were dating was purely the devil trying to prevent us from becoming a union. I understand that today. I didn't realize that at the time. It was just toxic to me. Personally, I didn't feel like Theresa's baggage, or she had been married, or she had 3 kids. None of that stuff mattered to me. There was something about her that was intoxicating. And no matter how hard I tried to separate, because we broke up
26 times.
a lot of times.
Several times.
But I never could stay away. It was just something. I've never smoked crack, but when I was in the military, I was an MP. So that's a military police officer. So I've dealt with addicts before. And when I sit and talk to them, how they say the drug called them, it's kind of like how Theresa called me, like spiritually, or it wasn't words. It was just something about her. Whenever I left her, I felt like this is not supposed to happen. And on one particular day, now I'm really passing all the way through our dating.
Go ahead.
I had left her I was out visiting her, and we had another argument, which wasn't unusual, but this one was really, really bad. And I left and I went back to my apartment. I'm like, I'm done. And I'm pacing in my apartment like a caged animal, like you see animals at the zoo walking back and forth. And so my younger brother, who is now my pastor, Coy, was going to school at Western Michigan. So he's in Kalamazoo.
Okay. Yep.
I called him. I had a cell phone, a bag phone. So I called him while I'm driving from her place to my place. And I don't really remember what I said to him. I'm ranting, but whatever it was enough for him to get into his car and drive to my apartment in Lansing. And he says, man, I'm on my way. I'm going to talk to you. And I told him then, I said, when you get here, I don't want to talk about the Bible. I don't want to talk about Jesus. I don't want to talk about none of that stuff. And it's ironic to me today that those were the things that I told him I didn't want to talk about. I didn't say I don't want to talk about my relationship, the violence in the relationship. I didn't say any of that. I said, I don't want to talk about God. Don't talk to me about Jesus. He gets to my apartment and he's not there for 20 minutes. And I put him out because he started talking about God. He started talking about Jesus. Specifically, he said, before I leave, he asked me a question. When you think about Theresa, when I say the name Theresa, what comes to mind? Now, I had never been familiar with Proverbs 31, ever. In fact, I wasn't too familiar with Proverbs. And I started to describe to him verbally what came to mind when I thought about Theresa. To which he said, and I quote, you should read Proverbs 31. To which I said, what's that? He said, that's a book in the Bible. And I exploded. I told you I didn't want to talk about the Bible. Get out of my house. I put him out.
Wow.
I started reading Proverbs 31, and I called him while he was driving back to Kalamazoo. And I said, dude, this stuff that I'm reading is exactly who she is to me. The next day, I met her at her job in the parking lot, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and asked her to marry me.
Wait.
I told her I don't have a ring because the mall ain't open yet. Actually, service merchandise. The store is not open.
It's not there anymore.
I'm going up to the store. I'm going to buy you a ring. I bring you a ring when the store opens. But I know for a fact that you're who I'm supposed to be with. And that was 26, 27 years ago.
So I do want to add something a little bit of kind of go back a little bit when we were dating and how toxic it was and how he kept saying I was intoxicating. I never admitted until much later on, intoxicated wasn't the word I used, but I remember every time we broke up, most of the time, 99.999% of the time, he would come back to pursue me. But I
don't remember it like that, right. But that's okay.
But let me say this. I think that I knew that he would. So I didn't have to. I think I would have, but I knew that he would. So I would just wait, hoping he would. Even if I had told him, don't ever call me again, I don't want to talk to you anymore, I knew that he would come back. And here was the other thing. There was something about Forrest that I had always seen that not too many people saw in him. There was this sense of confidence about, he knew who he was, but I don't think he even knew what to do with that. But there was just this endearing, admirable portion of him that I saw every so often. And that's what I hung on to. And many people, I know from my side of every family and friend, if you had asked them honestly about our relationship and if we should be together, every one of them would have said no. Get out of the relationship. Everyone. We didn't have one supporter, true supporter. We had people where we were like, oh, yeah, Coy would probably be the only one.
Wow.
You know, I had friends like, oh, yeah, I'm so happy you're happy. But you could tell they were like, you should probably pick somebody else.
Wow.
Yeah, there was something about him that when he was good, it was so good. And it was like, how come we can't? And I say we, not just me, just people around him. How come we can't see that more? So when he asked me to marry him, I was excited because I think at one point I gave you an ultimatum.
She did.
I did.
That led to one of our arguments.
It did. Because listen, I was already in my late 20s. I didn't think I was going to have any more kids. I was willing to. But in my mind, I'm like, listen, we're not dragging this on. Either you know or you don't. I know. And I probably shouldn't have given the ultimatum, but that's where I was at. That's where I was at. You didn't marry me, or I'm going to go someplace else.
To which I said, well, kick rock.
Yeah, right. Like a day.
I'm the best option you got.
Yes, you were.
And if you can't see that, then you blind. You can't see. I mean,
I agree.
It didn't matter to me.
Yeah, he was. I agree.
Listen, first of all, usually I got a lot to say. I'm not saying I don't, but I'm just like the beauty of, well, here's what I'm hearing, that God gave you all special eyes for one another, like insight into one another. So not everyone is supposed to see Forrest the way you do, right? Not everyone is supposed to see Theresa the way you do. And especially at that time, and that God gave you guys special eyesight for one another to see things in each other that maybe you didn't even know yourself. That's what I'm hearing, which is very powerful in and of itself, because when we talk about God's love for us, that's the heart of God's love, right? He sees things in us that we don't even. He sees the true version, like the redeemed, beautiful version of Ruth, of Forrest, of Theresa, right? And he's constantly helping us work towards that vision. So that to me.
I used to hear people.
Go ahead.
Oh,
no,
sorry.
please.
I used to hear people say all the time, it's a cliche, right? Oh, the Lord brought us together. And I don't
Yeah.
discount that. But I don't ask him to elaborate on it either. That's a personal
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so I know for a fact that the Lord brought Theresa to me. And it's difficult for me to explain to you how I know that, other than just to say, like faith, I know
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So if you're telling me that the Lord brought you and your wife together,
Yeah.
awesome. I think that's awesome, because I think a lot of people say that, but they really don't know what they're
Yeah.
talking about.
Sure. Sure.
And now at this age, in hindsight, I know for a fact he brought us together. Listen, I had written down on a piece of paper one day, well, at a time in my life, of the woman who I was going to marry. The only thing that Theresa checked on that box, on that list, the only box she checked is that she's female.
Wait.
This lady was going to be black. She was going to be college educated. She was going to be hard charging. She was going to be never married, no kids. In fact, a virgin, although I wasn't, but she was going to be. I had a height, a weight, a body type, a body size, everything. But if you know me, you know that's kind of the story of my life. I have planned it out. The only criterion that Theresa met was that she was female. And a lot of times I look at her today and I'll just be staring at her and I have this smile on my face and I'm like, man, Lord, I know when I was writing all that stuff down, you was like, boy, you are a fool. I got somebody for you. And that she's none of those things, but she's perfect for me. And like the kids and the fact that she had been married, when I'm in my own world by myself, that stuff never mattered. But as people,
Yeah,
outside
absolutely.
noise, background
For
noise,
sure.
people start talking. And I think that was a lot of the problems for me in the beginning.
Sure.
I was convinced by society that this should have been an issue, but it wasn't an issue. But am I crazy? Like, am I wrong? I'm a product of a stepfather. I've had a couple stepfathers. One of the reasons why, what Theresa says, I was good with the boys. So I was a stepchild. I didn't necessarily know what to do, but I knew what not to do. And I was a stepchild of stepfathers who I wouldn't pick for anybody.
Wow.
So I knew what not to do. I also knew as a child myself, I didn't really mind when I got in trouble. I wanted structure.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would step outside the bounds just so I could get in trouble. Just, do they really care? So I knew kids wanted structure. Because adults, well, they may not always want it, but they need
Absolutely.
structure.
Yeah.
So then I surmised, and so do children. So that was just kind of my approach. It wasn't until I stopped listening to what society was saying and really started focusing on how I felt internally that things started to come together. And just to be clear, that wasn't until we were like 10 years into our marriage.
Longer. 15.
Yeah.
Look, Ruth wants the truth.
Between 10 and 15.
Between 10 and 15.
Yeah, the first decade of our marriage was, it wasn't as bad as dating, but it wasn't good either.
So I want to trickle back a little bit in order to move forward, because you gave this very powerful story about how God helped you all move forward. And again, you might not have acknowledged his input at that time, but you said you read Proverbs 31 and you were like, that's Theresa. And
That's the one.
to be clear, your reaction wasn't, all right, let me call her back up, make up, let's keep dating. You met her at her job and proposed. Do you have...
Yeah, so I read Proverbs 31 and I didn't call her. I just went to her job early in the morning. Like, I was there at 7:30. I was there before she got there, waiting in the parking lot. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt This is what I was supposed to do.
Was that, again, hindsight, maybe not at the time, or however you want to talk about that. For you, Forrest, was that a moment where you were like, oh, God is telling you, oh, God's telling me to like do this? Or was this more of
How
like,
long we been together?
huh?
How long have you and I been together?
Yeah.
Almost 29 years.
That is the single clearest thing in 29 years that I've ever gotten about Theresa in this relationship. That crystal clear. The absolute clearest thing. There was no doubt. And there was no resistance from me.
Because I think what I'm so like touched by, that's not even the right word, but we'll go with it. What I'm touched by is like that clearness didn't lead you to just like, okay, let's keep in a relationship. It led you to commitment. So
Yeah.
why commitment at that point instead of just like, all right, I got to keep like working on this relationship.
However I was feeling at that time with when I was talking to Coy, I was angry,
Yeah.
I was upset. I really don't remember how I was feeling emotionally, just bad, negative. When I read I didn't understand why. Look, if I'm a leader, I'm to the best of my ability. I had always been in control of my life up to that point. And I couldn't figure out what is this pull that this knucklehead girl has on me. I just can't figure this out. And that bothered me because I'm a man's man and man figures it out. And I was so stupid
Man
back
make
then.
fire.
Man make fire. Yeah, I was so stupid. That brought clarity to me. I knew for a fact that in that moment, this is the person. This is my human. This is the one who God made for me. And look, I wasn't spiritual.
Yeah, right.
I didn't understand. I knew in that moment, internally, I knew this is the one. And from that point on, it didn't matter what anybody said. Look, my mom, love her to death. Love my mama to death. God rest her soul. I went to her and my sister, my oldest sister, and told them, I know how you guys feel, and that's fine, but this is who I'm going to be with. End of discussion. So find something that you like about her and focus on that, or I will not be around because this is who I'm going to be with. To which my mom said, well, I like her hair. I said, then focus on her hair then. I just knew. And I really can't explain it to you, Ruth. If I tried to explain it because we're doing this podcast, or it would be disingenuous. I just knew. I knew that like I know Jesus Christ went to the cross for me. That's how absolute it is. Period. Now, just like I know Jesus went to the cross for me, it doesn't mean every second of every minute of every hour of every day of every week I'm living my life, and it's a reflection of that.
Right.
Just like I knew she was for me, you couldn't always tell.
Yeah.
But I knew that this was my human. This was the person for me.
No, I'm loving it. And you're allowed to say, I just knew that. I think it's beautiful, but I love Theresa. I want to know for you before we move on past that. And by the way, I love Forrest too, how that led you to fight for her. That no, this is who I'm marrying. End of story.
Wow, this is such revelation. What was your question? I'm sorry.
I want to hear your revelation.
As I'm sitting here thinking about, it just occurred to me, just this very moment, because I don't know if your question was going to be, how did you know?
Girl, you know, keep going.
I don't know that
my question.
I don't know that I knew like he knew. I knew what I wanted. And Forrest was probably the first man in my life. And there were many men in various positions in my life that were probably more so bad for me than good, if you can imagine that. That includes my father and my brothers and any man that was in my life. I never found one that quite loved me the way I needed to be loved. And the revelation today was, I think what it was for me is that he was my protector in a way that I've never had. And I felt safe. Although there were some times we weren't safe together.
Yeah.
It was toxic. It was just dark and toxic is the best way I can describe it. But in the moments where I was with him and it was good, I felt so safe, and no man has ever made me feel that way. So I think that's what I wanted, not realizing that's what I really needed.
Wow.
The problem, though, became for me as his wife was that because I needed and wanted that so much and so bad every day, all day, my focus was on how can I please this man and not how can I follow the Lord and please the Lord.
Right.
So my focus was always on what can I do to make him, oh my gosh, what can I do? What can I do? And that part occurred to me several years ago when we were going through some stuff. The Lord told me, you're never going to please him the way you think you want to or need to. And so my focus was on the wrong thing.
People say that a lot, like you will never be able to please your spouse or whoever. What can you say or give practical examples, or I guess speak practically to what you mean by your focus was on Forrest versus on the Lord, and what were changes you had to make, and how did that impact the relationship then? And because some people would be afraid, like, oh, if I put my focus on God, then I'll neglect these other things. So how did that shift help?
So the shift helped in that, and actually it was very recent too, that solidified this process, was Forrest telling me, all of this time I have been focusing on the wrong thing with God. It's always been, thank you, Lord, for your mercy. Thank you, Lord, for your grace. Thank you, Lord, for all the blessings you give me. Not, thank you, Lord, for your holiness and your sovereignty. That's where we need to start. That hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, that solidified where my position is as a wife. And if God is your focus first, you can never go wrong in anything else, ever. And not even pulling away from him, because what that will do is allow me and help me be the wife that the Lord wants me to be for him, a mother the way he needs me to be, a grandmother, friend, a sister. So when I say pleasing to him, I want to be pleasing to my husband. Right. Of course, I try to take care of myself. I try to watch my land, that kind of thing. But to have the need for his approval of me is not where we should be. Our need and approval should be from the Lord. And that's super hard because our flesh wants different. Our flesh wants now. He can give me now what I need and what I want, or he can choose not to. We tend to get impatient, therefore falling back to the old of what we know. Well, I'm going to try to get his approval instead of God's approval because God's working too slow for me, that kind of thing.
Wow. No, that's good. I want to go, Forrest, you propose. Theresa, you say yes. And you all at this point, Theresa, the Proverbs 31 woman describes Theresa. I want to get into, if y'all are willing, like, how did y'all get together, or was this separate to you all in a faith place of like, God is directing and leading our lives? Because at that time, right, this wasn't really what was going on. Or Theresa, were you more starting to follow God at that point?
I don't know if my husband's going to agree with this. I think this part of the story of our relationship has to be told. So when he proposed in December. Before that, I had just started getting into the word. It was like 97. I just started getting into the word. I just started like, hey, I'd been introduced to Jesus when I was 18. I wanted no part of it.
96.
97. Anyway, that's semantics. Tomato. So we will never agree on dates. So I was introduced to Jesus at 18, wanted no part of it. The girl was wacky, in my opinion. I know today that woman prayed for me. I will always believe that. Anyway, fast forward. And so as I'm with him, see, Forrest has always believed in Jesus. Not always walked it, but and I knew that out the gate. So, but we just never really talked about it. But it was something happened. I don't know. I can't tell you what happened to move me in that direction of, hey, I really want to start living my life better. So I came to him one day and I said, we are no longer going to sleep together, be intimate until we're married. And this is before he proposed to me.
Interview's over.
Come on, Theresa.
So that was part of the ultimatum because I just wanted to do something right. I had 2 babies' fathers for my children. I was divorced. I lived a wretched life before I came to Forrest. I made some bad decisions. Upbringing was not great. So I just wanted to do something right. And so I said, we need to stop and to do things right way till we get married. We're not doing it. I must have read that somewhere in the Bible. So he was like, okay, all right. I mean, I guess, right? And we had
I took it as a challenge.
He did.
You're a competitor.
So we had a couple oopses,
No,
right?
They weren't oopses. I won the challenge.
Oh, all right. So then that was in like October, November of 97. Okay. Forrest proposed to me in December of 97.
Okay.
I said yes. Okay. In February 6th of 98, I found out I was pregnant. Now, keep in mind, I know I was bragging, right, to certain people about, oh, I'm not going to be intimate with Forrest until we get married, right? Being all the holiness that
I wasn't doing that. I was telling folks, yeah, I'm hitting that. I don't know what she talking about.
Edit that out.
I'm going to keep it 100 with you. I don't know what she talking about, but it's going to be on
real.
and pop.
That's real. Okay? Keep going.
Okay.
So I think even in that, the Lord was in there.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He's just like, listen, you can't play with words like that. You can't play with intentions like that. And so anyway, what was going to be a wedding in May of 99, we upped it to March of that year of 98. Now, remember, I found I was pregnant in February. Right. What I was not going to do was to walk down the aisle fat and get married and not be married and have an illegitimate child. I did not want to do that.
Yep.
And he already proposed, so I figure we're in it.
Yeah.
So we planned a wedding in 6 weeks and got married in March. Wow. Bought a house in April, moved in, and had Junior in October of 98.
Wow.
It was great.
Yeah.
It didn't matter to me if we got married early, if we waited until the original date. I'm marrying you.
Yeah.
So all that other stuff doesn't matter to me. But it was important to her. So I said, all right, that's fine. It don't matter to me.
Yeah. So in your question, Ruth, sorry, I kind of went backwards about when did we know, or did you ask when God came into the picture, into our marriage?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
I would say that started in 2006.
So I'm going to say this, Ruth. It started to manifest in 2006 where you could see it outwardly, but God was in the marriage day one.
Yeah.
And we just didn't know what we were doing. Yeah. I was reading magazines and books on how to be a good husband. And I was reading everything but the Bible on how to be a good husband. I was listening to people who had been divorced 3 times and they're telling me how to be a good husband. Well, then why would you not do it? I talked to women. What do you look for in a husband? I wanted to get it right because my mother and my biological father divorced when I was like 2 or 3 years old. And I didn't see him again until I was like 35, in my 30s.
Right.
So and then in that interim, I had 2. I never had an example of what a godly husband looked like. So I'm trying to figure this out through trial and error. And I had influences that, who am I to judge? But based on their lives, they weren't living a godly lifestyle either.
Yeah.
But those were my influences. And so the cartoon where you have the angel here and the devil here? For like 15 years, I thought you could see mine.
I think sometimes I could.
And I waffled in and out of both of those worlds trying to get this thing figured out. I believed men make fire. And what I didn't understand is Theresa isn't mine today. She wasn't mine 26 years ago. She's God's daughter. And the Lord give her to me to love, not to take care of. He takes care of us. He give her to me to love, like he gave Eve to Adam. He didn't instruct Adam to take care of Eve. He took care of them. The Lord calls us to be stewards. He doesn't call us to be owners. He's the owner.
That's good.
And if you look up the word steward in the dictionary, the definition is one that manages someone else's resources in a nutshell. So my job was to manage things here under God's authority and headship. And when you start saying, this is my woman, like it's ownership, you get things kind of mixed up. Things get cloudy. And you start trying to perform duties and do things that you were never intended, nor are you capable or designed to do. And that frustrated me because I was getting it wrong, if you will. But I was never intended to do it. And that led to some of the toxicity in our relationship. And then my own stuff. Everybody brings their own. The day you're born, you're given a backpack. And as you go through life, you put things in these backpacks. And by the time you reach adulthood, you got a 40, 50 pound weight just dragging you down. Most of us, by the time we hit old age, it's like a anvil or an albatross around your neck. And you never learn how to unpack that stuff. Well, you can't outside of or independent of God. I think he gives us the backpack and allows or suffers things to happen to bring us close to him. Look, right? Like these are our thorns.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to unload my own backpack and it don't work that way.
So as far as time frame, I think it was around 2006 to where I was baptized in 2006. Still didn't understand all of what that meant, right? But I think what had to happen in our marriage was the unveiling of truth. The unveiling of, where we just were mentally and physically with each other.
Yeah, we had to get real with that.
We did. And that was super, super hard because we both had things that we thought we could pack away and it didn't need to unpack. And it did. And that's how, I think that's what affected us towards each other as a couple. We thought we could manage it and we couldn't. And so, and then when the Boyers did move in with us in 2006, they came back and that's when they, was starting to go towards playing the church. That was a fun season.
Well,
it wasn't fun at the time, but it's definitely a pruning process that the Lord, I absolutely knew awesome. That he initiated it, he planned it, he had it all worked out. It would take that to kind of propel us into the right direction. He used them in a huge way, which is so crazy. But it was a long process, but it was a good process. It really was, and it needed to happen.
During that process, it validated for me. So I never really shared with too many people, like, I know she's mine, and this is how I know. I read Proverbs 31 and blah, 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 blah. Because people think you're crazy.
Yeah.
When he bought Koya and Keturah, when they came back from Dallas and stayed with us, as things played out. See, I thought I was doing a lot of things right. That's hilarious.
That's hilarious.
And I realized that I was way off on everything. I wasn't doing anything right. It took me back to when he told me to read Proverbs 31. And I said to him, I'm like, you have no idea how integral of a part you have played in this marriage. It was a conversation with you that started this whole thing. And now this process with you living with us, and he took me through a discipleship process for like a year and a half, 2 years. We were at a fork in the road.
We were. Our marriage was definitely at a fork in the road. Yeah,
And
for sure.
it was only, I started to realize at that point that I'm trying to be God. I'm trying to play God. And that's not my role. I'm a servant. And every man, I learned this recently in the last few years, every man is like Adam, right? And Adam was given a garden. And Adam was instructed by God to take care of the garden, to till the garden, to weed the garden, to nourish the garden, to love the garden. My household is my garden. And the Lord, just like the Lord put Eve, Adam didn't pick Eve. Adam was asleep when that happened.
That's true.
He woke up and there
she
Eve
was.
God picked Eve for Adam. She's my Eve. She's in my garden, and my job is to take care of the garden. My job is not to lord over the garden, because it ain't my garden. I'm just the caretaker of it.
Steward.
And I think when men really start to understand what that means in their role, they're going to always run into these conflicts of interest. See, Satan wants you to think it's your garden. It ain't your garden. He wants you to think you built the garden. You ain't built nothing. All you can do is destroy it. And it really wasn't until I started to really understand that and put that to practice, which is difficult, that things really started to, and things are still.
They are.
It's not perfect.
Right.
No.
She's not.
I am not.
I'm pretty doggone
I am
close.
not perfect, far from it. But I will say, so it's in keeping the time frame, 2006 is when things were starting to shift.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, we then moved in with Koi and Katora in 2012.
Oh, so this happened twice.
So it's almost like a second segment
Right, the second
of this pruning process. And so then we moved out and into this house in 16. So that's 2006. That's 10 years. Still trying, but I think we were trying, right? I don't know that we were trying the first 10 years of our marriage, or 9 or 8, whatever it was. And so that's when I looked at him and said more like 15 years, he kind of gave me that look like, it wasn't that long. But a lot has happened in the 26 years we were.
Yeah.
So I think we're both starting to understand our sincere roles as a husband and a wife. I love that he said that it's not our garden or his garden. It is the Lord. I have a position to do as a stewardship of a wife, as to my husband, as his helpmate. And oftentimes my help is not help at all. It's, I'm going to dictate how you should be. And that's where most of my issues were. And I can sit here and blame my mom and my dad and all that happened. But when things are brought to me of, hey, when you do this, this is what it makes me feel like, it puts me in such a place that I don't want to deal with it. So I never deal with it, right? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's just keep it moving. But it actually wasn't until recently we had a conversation, and Forrest brought to my attention something that happened, and it just started to click. And that one of them was the holiness of God first. It wasn't about me. It's never about us. But the Lord can certainly direct us in a way that we can be better for the kingdom. And it's husband and wife.
I think every day you arise, every day the Lord allows you to see the dawn of a new day. Whatever the relationship is, in this case, we're talking about husband and wife, but you are involved in lots of relationships.
Yeah.
Those relationships are an ongoing work on a daily basis. If not, then really what you're saying is, at this point, I've reached perfection. And I don't know, but I think that's only come to pass with one individual. Right. And none of us is Jesus Christ.
Not at all.
So you're always striving to just live in a manner that truly reflects the holiness of God, not God. If you're living in a manner that reflects God's grace and love, that means you're sinning every day, all day, knowing and willingly. No, you really want to live in a manner, I believe, that reflects the holiness of God.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to help avert you from a lot of sin.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
And I believe today, again, my Forrest had mentioned, there's no perfection here.
Right.
We're always figuring, because we're evolving, we're always learning, we're growing older. There's things that are happening that we didn't think would ever happen, those kind of things. However, I've always said when I've talked to a married woman, if I'm counseling her, we're just talking about our marriage, that, she'll ask about our history. Forrest and I have been through pretty much everything in our marriage but addiction. And even that we flirted with, right? Because addiction can be many things. It doesn't just have to be substance or drugs and things like that. God had to have been in it.
Yeah.
There's no way we could be here. And I like this guy. I mean, I really like him.
What's not to like?
I know. This is my dude. This is my guy. Like, I know he's my protector. I feel safe with him. He teaches me. That doesn't happen without God's grace. That doesn't happen. And so I also believe that the trials and things that he allowed us to go through, and some of them are our own stupid decisions, was that so we could be here sharing our story, maybe helping another couple, or maybe starting a marriage ministry, or various reasons why he brought us through it. I believe that. Believe that to the core of my soul.
God has a plan, and we are simple parts of his plan. I knew for a fact that Theresa was supposed to be who I was going to marry. She was for me. I couldn't tell you then how I just did, because I knew the Lord was telling me that. I can't tell you why. I don't know what the ultimate end game is for him where we're concerned. I can't tell you how this is all going to turn out, other than it is my desire for it to turn out that we're together and live we're like Jiminy Cricket, 103 and 105 and whatever. Well, maybe not that old, but
it's going to be great.
He's got a plan. Theresa started a nonprofit dealing with young women who have dealt with issues. She's been doing that for 13, 14, 15 years. I have run from what the Lord was calling me to do for many, many years. I knew it. I wasn't interested. I'm good. I have since stopped running from that. Actually, this month we're going to start a marriage ministry at our church.
This is beautiful.
I was told by a local pastor who is now deceased. I didn't know him. He heard me speak somewhere, and basically he just said real short that my life had an anointing on it. The Lord didn't give me such a powerful voice just for myself. He told me why he felt like my voice was powerful. And that was pretty much the end of it. But listen, I would say on an annual basis for about, maybe every 6 months, that there was a period of time for like 3 or 4 years where what that pastor said to me was reiterated by different people at different times. Black, white, men, women, Asian. They were telling me the same thing. And so the Lord wouldn't keep sending you those reminders if there wasn't some meat on the bone that's got some substance to it. And even in my own church, I'd be lying if I told you, but I hate that. I kind of like it, but like I'm head of security. Who said I'm security? Well, it's just you, right? It's just there's something about you, Ruth, that's different than anybody else. And whether you see it or not, or whether you realize it or not, that's just the thing that God gave you. And through him, you will acknowledge it. You'll understand it. You'll accept it. And then through him, you will use it to bring him and his kingdom glory. And that's when Ruth is really going to be experiencing fulfillment.
Sure. Yeah.
See, I just...
You got talking to Mike. There you go.
That was not the signal you said you were going to give her.
He just was like, no, let me just tell her like it is. No, that's... You guys touched on things that I wanted to go to, and you just went there. So I'm just so to be clear, I'm very humbled that I even get to hear your story, whether it was recorded or not, because I think uh, there are a lot of things you all are touching on, and some of which I will touch on my heartbeat. But what I do love, you've emphasized or you've brought up before, kind of the enemy's role or how he's tried to pull you back or hold you down or keep you bound in all kinds of stuff. And I just, God loves to use all kinds of people. And I think that's the power, of God, the power of the gospel, right? Isn't basically you're speaking to my perfectionism because I love to get things right the first time. I love to get things right. And it's hard for me when I realize, no, I messed this up or I didn't do this right. And your piece about the holiness, that it's like there's only one perfect. There's only one who's perfect.
Yep.
And so allow him to be perfect and therefore allow him to sharpen you, to help you grow in holiness.
Yeah.
So when other people especially see your imperfections and call them out, celebrate it versus like, oh no, I messed, oh my gosh. No.
Oh yeah. Queen of that.
Yes.
Queen of that.
Yeah.
And he only in the last, I don't know, year or two has helped me really start to work on that of like, no, allow people to call those things out because that's actually a beautiful thing. Because what you said, Forrest, about if you just stop in any relationship, what is that like? So you done? So you've reached perfection? You've reached that holiness? Like, no.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was a very powerful piece about that. But also, the enemy will try to hold you back and try to keep you bound in your mistakes, in your past, in your whatever. And I think before we close out, I would, if you're willing, I would love to hear how God has helped you all go from that place of, wow, we've made mistakes. You said, we've done basically everything in our marriage except, addiction, which right? How has God helped you not go from that place to like, no, we're heading up the marriage ministry at our church and God is using us. And let me tell you, he is using you. This isn't an in question. This isn't about future use. He's currently using you. He has been using you. And the use of you is just going to grow. So how have you all, like, speak on that? To go from that place of like, oh man, we've done everything to like, nah, we're going to allow God to use us.
I'm going first.
Dang it. Okay.
You want to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, Teresa, you're going to go first.
Okay, thanks. Mine won't be as long, I don't think. One of the main things that I have learned about marriage and about issues that families have is that we are always taught from the very beginning to keep things a secret. Always. What happens in this house stays in this house. The enemy loves that. One of the things that I learned from my sister-in-law, my BFF, if she watches this, for Keturah, is that tell. Tell. Not to gossip. Right? So there's gossiping, there's telling. You have to find your people, your tribe, your circle, like-minded people that have the same goals in their faith walk, in their marriages, in their families, to circle yourselves around. We've had many friends in and out of our lives. And when we decided to do this walk with Jesus, we lost a lot of friends. Some we kept, some we lost. But one of the main things that I had learned was I'm not keeping this a secret. I need to share. So I, one, know what I need to do. And two, so the enemy's not lying to me saying, well, if you tell, then people are going to judge you and they're going to do this and they're going to do that, which is why you have to find people that are trustworthy, that you know love you, that are doing the same walk, that believe in the same God that you believe in. And that's, I think, what turned it around personally for me, is that we found people that we could trust, and I just knew they loved us. And Coy and Tora love us. And they've always been in our corner and rooted for us, like wholeheartedly. Like, gosh, I wish you guys could have been a fly on the wall when they lived with us. Those two, Katora and Forrest, my gosh, they are the same people.
No, she wants to be like
crazy.
Right.
But they love each other. They have a great relationship. But just the relationship in general it's just great. And they did help a lot. Sometimes we don't like to admit that to them because,
they got big head.
They got big head. No. We appreciate them. And so that's the one thing that I learned for any couple out there, that if you're going through some things, find your tribe, find like-minded people, and don't keep things a secret, because that never will solve anything for your marriage, ever.
That's good.
And for me, ditto to what Theresa said. You got to out the enemy. He lives in the dark. He runs from the light. If you're keeping secrets and you're keeping it in and you're not telling anybody, you're waddling in darkness. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, shadows can't hurt you.
That's good.
But then if I could speak to men that are watching this. So as I got into reading scripture and specifically reading about men in the Bible, again, outside of Jesus Christ, these dudes was jacked up. Yes. Moses was a murderer.
Yeah.
Solomon was a whoremonger. These guys, every issue that I have struggled with, I have found a prominent man in the Bible who struggled with the same issue. Yet God still was able to use that guy.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to say celebrate your shortcomings, but acknowledge them. My wife and I can sit and watch a movie today, and there's something that takes place in the movie, and the guy is dead wrong, and it's something that I did to her. And it'll take me to a place, this is going to sound negative, but it's not negative. I did things to hurt people, not just my wife, but I intentionally hurt people in my past. And these people are children of God. And there's always a sense of sorrow and remorse for what I did. I can come back and say I'm sorry, and I have to a whole lot of people. But that doesn't take away the damage that I did to this person. And that damage can follow them for the rest of their life here on earth. And the Lord keeps me solemnly aware of that. That's not Satan.
Right.
That's the Lord, which is why we got to be careful about what we say, how we talk to people, and how we treat people and what we do to people. And you first have to approach everybody, good or bad. Even those who live a life of sin were created in God's image. You have to be aware of that when you approach them. It doesn't matter what they are or aren't doing. That's irrelevant. It's how are you treating them? And if you're not treating them like they are potentially a child of God, then your approach is incorrect. That's just kind of where I'm at. I'm telling you, I still get it wrong more than I get it right. I'm not trying to be perfect, but I am trying to focus on God's holiness and not his grace and his mercy. I appreciate the grace and the mercy. I don't want to eliminate the grace and the mercy from my life because I miss the holiness more than I get the holiness right. So I'm in need of the grace and the mercy.
Absolutely, right.
But my prayer was always like, so there's an acronym, ACTS, right, is how you pray. And each one of those words, ACTS, has a meaning. And I still follow that. It's cool, I'm used to it. But while I'm asking God for his forgiveness, and while I'm thanking him for his forgiveness, I'm following that up quickly with, Lord, help me live in a way that it's your mercy that that it's your holiness that I'm acknowledging. See, because I think the better I get at acknowledging that, the less I'm going to have to ask for forgiveness or for your grace and mercy. I could be wrong, but that's the direction that I'm headed.
Yeah.
So for men, acknowledge that you don't have all the answers. In fact, without God helping you, you have none of the answers. The structure is designed in a way that you are not the head. He has placed you in a position of headship in your home, but not in headship. You still are following Christ, who is following our God. We get that mixed up. We get that confused. The things in you that cause you to get those things confused, God gave you an extra dose of something in that area so he can use that for his glory and his kingdom, not for you to run over for. That's not why you got that. You're not an alpha male because God put you in charge. No, you're an alpha male because the enemy is coming at you for the things that God has designed you for. And that little extra that he put in you is going to get you through that. That's why he made you an alpha male. You're not to treat your wife like you're an alpha male. You're to treat your wife lovingly. And sometimes that means you don't really feel like an alpha male. You feel like a chump. Be a chump. Be a chump. The Lord calls you to love her. That's it. That's it. And it's really hard to love somebody from an alpha position. It's really hard to do that. So I'm an alpha male when an intruder tries to come into my house. I'm an alpha male when you mistreat me and mine. But I'm not an alpha male to mine. My wife knows I'm alpha by the way she sees me deal with the world. I don't have to come in here and beat her up to prove to her that I'm alpha. No. God is the ultimate alpha male. When's the last time he beat you up to prove that to you?
Right.
No. It's his love, his grace, and his mercy that you're always on your knees whining about. That's how he wants us to love.
Ephesians, is it 5:23 through 28? I believe about married couples and our roles. That scripture is the best place to start for married couples. I truly believe that. It tells us our role. It tells us what we're to do. And I know that our pastor has always said, stop reading the other person's mail. Women are real good at that. So real good at telling a man what they should be doing while we all over here not doing what we're supposed to be doing. We're really good at that because if we've been mistreated or it's not fair or because the world says that women should be, empowered and that's a lie from the pit of hell. The Lord gives us explicit instructions on what to do. And if you say you trust his word, then you should trust that word and how what your role is in being a wife and a husband should be.
Theresa used to say to me, as things were getting better, man, there was a time when I felt like I was always walking on eggshells. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? When I really started praying about that and asking God, okay, I hear what she's saying. I'm intelligent enough to understand, but I don't know that I really comprehend. Lord, what is she saying to me? And he painted a picture for me. And, it was heartbreaking. In my mind, I envisioned my wife and my kids at home, just having a high old time. And then as they hear my car drive up and the mood and the temperature and the attitude changes inside, almost to one that's terrifying. And that just broke my heart. As men, we are the thermostats. In the household, we set the temperature. You're not the furnace. You don't provide the power.
Right.
God is the furnace.
That's good.
You're the thermostat. And when it really dawned on me that how I come in and say hello can change the mood. Our dog used to run.
That is Ruth. He's not lying. Our dog could tell.
Our dog used to run. Or the dog would be wagging it. I thought he was going to break his back. He wagged his tail so hard. But the Lord kind of put these things in my memory. Like, that's what that is? Like, I don't think men understand how much authority the Lord has actually given us here on earth. And I use the word authority because it's ordained. Now you have to learn how to wield that as Christ loved the church. That's how you're supposed to wield that. It's not a baton to beat people with. It's a pillow to provide them with some comfort and some surety, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have to run through this house. I'm a man. Everybody in here knows that. I ain't had to run through the house doing that.
My goodness. I'm just, you know what? This is so perfectly timed with y'all starting the marriage ministry too.
Well, we'll see.
Stop it. Because I just, the things that are, I mean, you're preaching a word, okay? And I'm going to let that word settle on people's ears. I want us to wrap up with this question because I'm gonna reflect on your all's stuff. I've got thoughts, but I want people to just sit with what you all have been sharing. It's so rich, and you guys, I just have to say, you guys bring so much wisdom, value, and perspective to whether people are married or not. This is just. You're speaking the truth. So I appreciate just everything you all are sharing and the time that you've given to do that. I want us to wrap up with this question. This is the question that I ask every couple. I'm putting my mic up because I really want Forrest to hear the question. Just kidding. But obviously, you know, the name of the podcast is Heartbeats. So I'd love for each of you to share something your spouse does now, currently, that makes your heart beat.
I'm gonna go first.
Hey, yay!
We're gonna have to edit this.
No, this is not a children's podcast.
You made me throw my watch off. I was so excited.
Makes your heart beat.
So, all the security, he makes me laugh. I have always teased my husband. The minute I stop laughing, we are in trouble. He still makes me laugh, gut bust laugh, because some of the things that this man says, it's just like no other. But the one thing he does say to me that puts me in a tailspin, baby, when he calls me that, and he doesn't use it, like he doesn't say it all the time. He doesn't take advantage of that moment, but he almost says it at the right time. And Ruth, when I tell you my heart pitter patters, I don't know what it is about the tone. It's just so endearing to me. And girl, that's all I'm going to say. And keep it G-rated. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, we got 4 kids, so it ain't always G-rated.
I was going to say, no, for sure not. Girl, everyone can pick up what you throwing down. All right. So yes, I love it. Okay, good. Forrest, what about you? You can keep it PG.
So for me,
for you,
it's not a word. It's what she does. So I hear guys talk about their wives all the time. And it's not always in the most pleasant terms. I've sat and I've seen couples interact with one another. And I'm going to say recently, like in the last 5 years, sometimes the guy's sitting there talking to me and I'm engaged in a conversation and all I can hear is in my mind, I'm saying to myself, Lord, thank you that I don't have that type of woman to live with. So for me, it's even when things are bad, like I can be yelling at Theresa and call her out of her name and be extremely disrespectful and unloving. This is going to sound this may sound bad, but she's still a Proverbs 31 woman. She still does the things that I read. I mean, that's it. That's who she is. That is she will challenge me, but she doesn't really challenge me. She will, when she gets outside of herself, she can act foolish sometimes. But when she is authentically who she is, it's like, man, God, you gave me like the perfect mate. And maybe it's the perfect mate for me, but I don't live with a contentious wife. I don't live with a nagging wife. I live with, don't take this the wrong way, an obedient wife. I live with a wife who loves God. Listen, Theresa asked me one day to help her move the mattresses on the bed. So I said, yeah, okay. So we're flipping these mattresses. And I got these orange and yellow and purple and green and fuchsia, these little 3M stickies, plastered from head to toe in between the mattress and the box spring. And I'm like, what the hell is all this? What is this?
I forgot.
And I picked one up and I read it. It's a prayer. It's a scripture. It is my wife praying for her husband. And full of them.
Wow.
I have this leather attache case that I carry to work. Now, she don't know this, but she'll find these little cubby holes and she'll put these little things in them. And if they were under our son's bed, in between his mattress and his box spring, right? The Lord has blessed me with a praying wife. And she's not praying that, Lord, convince my husband to buy me red bottles.
Right.
Lord, she's praying for me.
Yeah. Oh.
It's for me. It's not about her. It's about me. But she understands that if I'm aligned, then she benefits directly.
I do.
And if there was another guy on this podcast, he'd be like, hey, man, brother, he would understand what I'm saying. God wired us differently. He wired men and women different and wired the way the Lord has wired me. And I want to say most men, the guys will understand what I'm saying. My wife will say the stresses of owning my own business and going to work. And there can be some stress there, but I'm wired for that. That don't make me suicidal. That don't make me want to run away. That challenges me to conquer and overcome.
That's good.
I don't have to deal with that in my house. See, I've never walked on eggshells, which made me saddened for her because I know what it feels like to freely come and go internally and externally. So I want her to experience that. That's why I feel sorrow. And even today when she says it, I'm like, man, I can't believe I made you feel that way. Because I know the pleasures and the joy of not living that way. And I want you to feel that also. I want you to experience that also. She cooks for me. She cleans for me. She puts me first. She prepares my plate. You want me to read Proverbs 31?
I'm following you, so do what you got to do.
When the Lord said, a man who finds this, I have gold, literally. I have money, literally. I have possessions, lots of them. I trade it all. We were homeless together. I trade it all. I would trade it all. I don't want another woman. If he takes Theresa first, I pray that he takes me within the next few minutes. Yeah. I don't want to be here. I done forgot what it feels like to take care of myself. I ain't interested.
He does know where the salt and pepper is now, though.
I know where the salt and pepper is. I know where it is now. 6 months ago, I just was missing salt and pepper. I was fighting with the little cast iron pot in the stove trying to fix a hot dog yesterday. And listen, I'm an intelligent, educated man.
Yeah.
I haven't had the feeling of I have to do some of these things. I haven't experienced that in almost 30 years. I don't have to do it. So I don't know if that really answers your question. Yeah, my wife loves me and I think she's beautiful. And again, do I have to read Proverbs 31? Because at the end of it, it says a man who finds this, a husband who finds this. That's the part that I have highlighted in a different color because the whole chapter is highlighted in yellow. That part's highlighted in green. Go green.
Go white.
Go white.
Yeah.
And that's why, because having read through that, I really understand the man that finds this. I really understand that. And so, and selfishly, that makes me want to be better. That makes me want to be what I'm supposed to be for her. Because I don't want to lose that. Because I'm telling you, if Theresa dies and I'm young and some other girl's like, I like you, when I roll out this scroll of what she going to have to do, she going to be like, oh, never mind. So I'm telling you.
Wow. I mean, what a tribute. I'm just like, no. Y'all, this is, I just am so glad I got to hear this. For real. I just am so honored. And
Heck, you ain't heard the half of it.
I know, that's the thing.
Segment 3.
I know, because there's more. I'm like, we could sit for hours and hours and hours. I would need to do a part 2, 3,
Sure.
4.
Dave.
But I think just when you were talking, it just the phrase "two are better than one." That's what came to mind. Is that there are things that Theresa is designed to do for you, and you're designed to do for her, and that together you do more because you're not meant to do it all alone.
And you know what, Ruth, I don't mean to interrupt
Please
you,
do.
but I have a young protege who I'm actually grooming to take over my practice someday.
Yeah.
And he said to me a couple of weeks ago, man, there ain't nothing that you don't think you can do. And he's right. There are things that I know I can't do. But if it's something that I want to do, with God helping me, it's done. Part of where that comes from is her, right? Like I have my doubts and I'm like, man, can I really do that? And blah, blah, blah. I worked for the state of Michigan. I was an analyst. I had a great job. I left that job to enter the financial profession, which I've been doing now. I'm in year 17. And I'm one of the best, I might add.
Of course. Sure. Absolutely.
My wife said to me, everybody told me how crazy I was to leave my state job. Theresa said to me, I believe you can do whatever you put your mind to do. And not one day since then have I looked back. And I don't know if men really understand what it means to have your lover, your confidant, your helpmate, not just say they're behind you, but you really feel like she's behind me. It ain't even that she got my back. She just believes in me. I'm going to the moon. Because God already gave me the fuel and the battery pack to get there. I just need a launching pad, and that's what she is. It's over. It's a done deal. Remember I told you I had that $1 million check I just didn't cash it yet?
Yeah.
Well, when this podcast is over, I'm headed to the bank.
Oh my gosh. This No, so good. I just you know what? I could add on things, but I just and you all you know me, I'm a talker, okay? So I can add on I can keep adding on, but I really I knew this was going to be a big interview. Partly because it took so long. I don't mean this badly.
No, right.
It took so long for us to do it. And
Her fault.
nope, it wasn't. I don't even mean it like that. I often
Girl, tell the truth. Shame the devil. Her fault.
no, because when I tell you, you all came recommended. I told you all this, I think last week when we were talking. You all came recommended to me fall of 22. Okay, so over a year ago, about a year and a half ago. And at that time, I barely knew you all. I literally just knew faces. In fact, I wasn't even sure you two were like who. I just knew I was given a name, right? And I knew your faces, but I didn't know how y'all were connected, right? Because I was so new to the church. But so I told Teresa, I was like, I don't want to just come up and be like, hey, can you, I know I'm like just new to the church. You want to be on my podcast? Like that just felt awkward to me. So it was almost a full year later before Teresa and I actually even connected at this women's retreat we went on,
Women's
the
conference.
women's
Yep.
conference. And we talked,
Mm-hmm.
I knew we clicked very quickly, and I brought it up to her. That was in September of 23. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen God often work this way in my life that, and this speaks a little bit to y'all's story, that sometimes the most beautiful things come out of a long process. And
Yeah.
the fact that Forrest, the fact that we just went through this process, I just was like, yeah, I just, yeah, I think this interview is going to work out. Now, number one, but also like, I think God's got something really to say. Like there is something I need to hear their story. If it ain't for nobody else, but I know it's for me. But I know so many people need to hear what God has and is. I know it's a process. Is doing in and through you all. Um, and I just want to say that no matter what people have gone through in their lives, no matter what their past looks like, no matter what their current looks like, God wants to use you. He wants to use you.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you have, by the world standards, lived a pretty like pure, checked off all the Christian boxes life, or whether you have, seemingly messed it all up and done the opposite, it everybody feels like God can't use them. Somehow the enemy tricks
Mm-hmm.
every single person or tries to convince every single person, no matter what. God can't use you. No, you ain't. No one needs to hear what. No, I'm just hearing you all, and I'm like, oh my flippin' goodness. God wants to use you. And so I say that to
Yeah.
you too, but also to myself, to anybody
Mm-hmm.
listening, that it does not matter what you have
No.
been through or even what your current season looks like. God,
Satan has been watching men. Satan has been studying men since Adam. Think about that. He's been around. He was around before Adam. He's been studying mankind since Adam. He watches a lot of gang film. So he's got a plan to get at everybody. You have to be as assured in your place with Jesus Christ as you are with anything to defeat the schemes of the enemy. He loses.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't believe that, then in your nuclear life, he's going to
yeah,
win.
yeah, yeah. And you know what, Forrest? This is something that God has brought out to me in the last month or so, that we talk a lot about, and it's true, how strategic the enemy is, right? Like he studies, like you said, all the film. And here's the reason one we win, period. But God
Yeah.
is even more strategic. He's
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
he knows us even better than the enemy. He created us. He formed us.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Correct.
for example, y'all were at a like we about to split. Like this might be it for real, for real. We just had this huge blowout fight, right? And Coy comes over and gives you this very pointed question, and then, oh, that sounds like Proverbs 31, and then you read it. That's God being like, excuse me, let me help you out. Strategy. Let me clear. Yo, God is so much more strategic than the enemy. And so he roars around with that shadow, like you said, that shadow that can't touch you, that can't actually hurt you. But
That's
he can
right.
be very convincing. But God, when we see how God steps in and is like, let me help you out,
Mm-hmm.
game over.
Yep.
Yeah. And when I read Proverbs that day, the the time that I read scripture before that day, years, years, years.
Mhm.
It wasn't like I'd been reading the Bible. Years, years.
You soften your heart enough to read it. That's
Yep.
the
He did.
that's the I mean, I just the God's hand involved in our lives is so real. And that's honestly the heart of this podcast is not so much to say, wow, aren't Forrest and Theresa amazing? You are. But this
Mhm.
isn't really about you. This is, as you all hear their story, I pray you understand that there is the one and true God who's been overseeing their lives and is
Yeah.
overseeing
Sure.
each of our lives. And sometimes, and
Mhm.
he's doing it even when we don't acknowledge it, even we don't
Mhm.
recognize it. And so
Yep.
that he loves us so intimately and knows us so intimately, and that is what I'm so just I'm gonna have to sit on this one for a while, but I want to thank you both so much for your time
Thank you for having
and
us.
honestly really being so thoughtful about this interview and really our conversation, the wisdom you all shared just from your lives. Your lives are a sermon. Like your lives are preaching exactly what you're talking about, and the holiness of God, his grace and mercy, but the holiness of God, his love and tenderness towards us. I'm just so blessed and honored. So thank you guys so much. We might have to do a 2, 3, 4, 5 no part, but I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Church.
For
Yeah.
Hey,
sure. For sure.
that's right. So, yes, thank you guys. And look forward to hearing more and more wisdom from you all. So, yep. I will,
But thanks for having us.
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Well, I will see you guys later. All right, everybody. This is Heartbeats time. So, this is the part of the episode where I share my heartbeat. So, what did I sense God communicating to me as I listened to Forrest and Theresa's story and what God has done in their lives? As always, I'd love to hear yours. So, what was your takeaway as you heard their story? And you all know, please, there's always so many. We touched on a lot of things, so I won't go into the things that I already touched on during our discussion, but for me, it was this word, and I tried not to say it too much during it because I wanted to talk about it now. But the word process. Process. God got us on a process. And I think a lot of times we focus on the end game. Like, oh, I can't wait till I get to, boom, name your thing. I can't wait till I reach this thing. But we forget that there's this entire process that gets us to this place, and God is involved in that process. There was something Forrest said, and I intentionally did not go back to it because I wanted to highlight it here. He talked about how in 2006 that was when there was outward manifestation of the work God was doing. That's when it was outwardly seen. That was so powerful because it just speaks to, no. There was a whole process prior. God was moving and working in their lives and in their marriage and in their walk with Him prior to that. But there were some noticeable shifts or breakthrough in that season in 2006 and in, I think they said 2016 or 2012, something like that. There were a couple of major shifts, and a lot of times we can point to these shifts in our life or these major moments, but in reality there's often this process that God is taking us through that we don't see the fruits of necessarily until a specific time. If you liken it to, let's say, a plant, right? And if I love friends of mine, I have, done this with each other, looked at different images of plants, and you'll see a plant that when it springs out of the ground, that's just when it's visible. But if you look at what it looks like beneath the ground, there's a whole root system that had to grow and form and develop and really make a foundation for that plant before it busts through the ground. So we see it finally coming out of the ground, but it won't come out of the ground unless it goes through this process. And so God takes us through processes to make us ready to be fit to be used for his kingdom in various ways. He don't waste no time. I just know he don't waste no time. And if you're finding yourself in a season, in a process season, and oftentimes where he might have us fruitful in one area and in a process in another, right? But the point is, he is not wasting any time with you, with me. And that process is important for greater fruitfulness to come. And so don't get stuck. We cannot, I'm saying this to myself, we cannot get stuck in the past. Oh, God can't use me because I did this or I made this mistake or whatever. Can we so trust God that he's like, please, boo, I am God of heaven and earth. I created you. You went through this. Yes, that was hard. And yes, because of this fallen world, it shouldn't have happened. But I will take you on this process where I will bring beauty from ashes. I will bring redemption through those things, through your mistakes, through the trauma, the hardship you've been through. And I'm gonna use it far beyond what you could think or imagine. So let's appreciate today the process. Maybe the processes God's had in your life where you can be like, oh yeah, no, that God was moving even in that season where I didn't maybe recognize it. But also, what are the processes he has you on right now? Y'all, it's for greater glory for him and greater fruitfulness to come for his kingdom. So I love you all. Thank you for hanging with us today. And I'm excited to bring you another story of God's power at work in the lives of his people. So take care and have a beautiful day.
You are my dream.